2, we go live, or at least
No.
live to tape.
Live to tape, or not tape. There's no tape here.
Okay, live to digital.
Live to digital. Live to YouTube. Hello, everybody in the YouTube world and in the podcast world. Welcome to another edition of the Media Boat Podcast. Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome. It is Wednesday, July the 8th, 2020. This is another marooned edition of the Media Boat Podcast as we continue to broadcast from remote locations.
No current timeline of when we will be back in the same room together.
No, someday, perhaps. But for now, we are bringing this podcast to you via the internet, the magic of the internet.
The magic of editing and cameras and people being within a space together.
Yes, like the illusion of friendship. Anyway.
I guess that's one way to put it.
His name is Mike.
I'm Mike. He's Matt. We are Media Boat Podcast. He skips talking about us. About us talking about movies, TV, video games, and music. Not necessarily in that order.
So thank you for joining us this week. Let's get rolling right into it. Hopefully a quick show this week. I don't think anything will go too long. We always start the show with movies, and here is some movie news for you. First up is a story about something that I actually watched this past week.
Hey, I watched it too.
Probably most of the world, at least the Disney Plus subscribers world, probably watched this as well. If you're a Disney Plus fan or a Broadway fan or just a person who's aware of pop culture, you're probably aware that Hamilton, the Broadway musical, is now available in filmed form on Disney Plus as of Friday. Well, Disney is so proud of their little baby, this thing they've birthed, that they plan to submit the project for various awards, which is not something that probably a lot of people saw coming. A lot of people thought, well, if this had been released theatrically in its original schedule, which would have been, what, at the end of this year? And then
2021.
Well, it was next year. Okay.
Yes.
Well, then they would have made more sense. But now, to quickly release it via streaming, probably a lot of people didn't imagine that it would be eligible for many awards, right?
Well, we've been talking about this for about the past month now.
So Disney is taking a stab nonetheless. They have already submitted for various Guild Awards and will let them decide on the eligibility of the film. They also have plans to submit the streaming movie to the Academy Awards, possibly trying to argue that in the past, stand-up comedy films have been eligible for Oscars. So a lot of people are saying, well, they're not going to get much headway here. And the main reason is because of a 1997 rule that got changed that basically said works that are essentially unfiltered records of performances are ineligible for awards. Basically, if you just have a stage performance and you're just shooting it and not changing it in any way, like with editing or like with like special effects or something that alters it significantly, if that's just straight up the stage version of what you're of the thing that you're filming, it shouldn't be eligible. That's at least what this rule change said. Speaking of rule changes, though, as we've reported through the year so far, the Academy did change the rules about streaming content in light of the coronavirus and its restrictions on theatrical release. So it would be an interesting turn of events if Hamilton was deemed ineligible because of these recording stage performances rules as opposed to the streaming rules.
Yes, but doing my due diligence and watching the show multiple times and listening to multiple podcasts and even Disney Plus's own behind the scenes on it, this performance was filmed at 3 separate times, twice in front of a large live audience and once specifically done for close-ups. So technically, because they are 3 separate performances spliced together, that does count towards editing. And because there are like close-up shots and highlighted effects that you won't get from watching it via a stage play, that does technically count towards it being an edited film.
So, while that may be true, it looks like since this original story has come up, it's already been shot down. So I saw in a couple of articles today, Variety had a piece that was basically, the headline was straight up, "It will be ineligible for the Oscars." So, I'm not surprised. I talked to a friend of the show, Christy, about this, who is a big fan of the show and Broadway in general, musicals and plays in general. And her take on this was no, like no one thought that it would be eligible. There's no reason for it to be eligible. It had its, it has its places where it can compete. The Variety article specifically pointed out that it's technically eligible for Emmys.
Yes, and that is, I think, where it can and probably will earn a lot of awards.
Right.
But yeah, as you said, I saw the same thing from Variety for the actual Academy Awards.
No.
That's why they said they're going to submit them and then let them deem it ineligible instead of, say, doing what they did for Lion King and just straight up not submit it as an animated film, which it totally should have been.
So I say that, probably don't hold your breath for an appearance at the Oscars. I don't think this thing will be nominated for anything. However, if Disney puts their full push into the Emmys, I could see this doing pretty well.
I can see that doing well too. But we'll talk about that later. In a quick hot second.
Well, first of all, let's finish up the news by talking about a second story, a recurring theme here on the Media Boat Podcast, driving in and seeing stuff. And this time, it's the idea of driving into a Walmart parking lot to watch a movie.
A what?
Yeah. So Walmart, giant evil conglomerate, Walmart, has revealed plans to turn its parking lots into drive-in movie theaters starting in August. Converting them to drive-ins just needs a screen, projector, and the short-range broadcast equipment to deliver the sound to every vehicle. The company has created a website that sets early August for their opening. In a tweet, the company did reveal a little more about the initiative. It's a partnership with Tribeca, a company who's already been organizing movie showings at other drive-ins around the country. And like movie theaters, Walmart will be offering snacks through a car-side service that will ensure social distancing is maintained. Whether or not the movies will be free, with Walmart making its money through concession sales, remains to be seen. I can't imagine you set up like a ticket kiosk for this thing. I would imagine that they probably just let a certain number of cars come in, and they'll make up their money on the snacks.
Yes, but I do see it being a problem where you have a car parked in a Walmart parking lot for 3 hours to be in front.
Yeah.
Or say, hey, I'm going to park my car here, leave it, and then drive away in my other car.
Yeah.
Only to come back and like, hey, I parked here. Like, say you park here, take your other car, go down to the local In-N-Out, grab your food, have your dinner out there in that car, and then mosey on over to your other car that's parked there.
I don't know if anybody's that clever, except for probably you. So you want to try that and report back in August. Let us know how that goes.
It means going to a movie.
Yeah, in a drive-in. What I will say about this, though, is it's a wonderful experiment in what we prioritize as a country and as businesses here. Because remember back in March when we were all told that parking lots of these giant stores like Targets and Walmarts would be used for COVID-19 testing? Mm-hmm. Remember that? Doesn't that seem so quaint?
I believe I saw like all the CEOs and VPs stand out in front of the White House and claim that that's what they were going to do.
Yeah, they talked a big whole thing about how they were going to do it, and they kissed Trump's ass, and it was great, right? Yeah, that totally was going to happen. Anyway, so drive-in movies. I guess that's a good replacement for
profits.
Profits. Bottom line.
Was our slogan? It's a business.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be this gross.
Well,
let's move on and talk about something decidedly not gross. We both watched the aforementioned Disney Plus Hamilton.
Which up front, what is not about hams or porks or anything like that up front.
No.
Totally caught me by surprise.
No ham. Nope. However, it is about Alexander Hamilton, founding father.
I believe you have to sing it now. That is the Disney Plus rule.
No, it's not a rule. Not a rule here in the Media Boat podcast. So here's my question to you. Before watching this version, had you seen or heard anything from this show?
My brother saw it in Pantages, I believe, when it came out touring out here. And he saw it and he loved it and claimed it was the best thing ever.
Yeah.
I said, okay, yeah, I'd like to give the audio a shot and listen to it. But at the same time, I knowing me, I wouldn't put like a visual to it. So it'd be kind of like a wasted point of my first exposure to it. And granted, this was back in 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
So like I knew of it. I obviously won all the Tonys at that time. A lot of awards, lots of praise. Lin-Manuel Miranda got Moana, not from it, but it helped.
Yeah,
put him into more of a main
image up for sure.
Yeah.
So this was your first time seeing or hearing it, basically.
Yes. More or less. So I had heard the parodies versions of a couple of songs.
Right.
But never the actual songs themselves.
Okay. So yeah, that sounds about right. That seems like about the level that most people are coming into this with, because it's an expensive show. Even the touring, like, of course, there was the running joke about the Broadway show being super expensive and how, like, rich people saw it. Like, that was the whole joke, right?
Right, yeah, take out a loan to see Hamilton.
Yeah, the rich people all got to see Hamilton. And then even when it came touring out here, I remember the kind of conversation was always about, well, tickets are kind of crazy. Like, you have to get in really early to get a decent deal. And so, yeah, it's been this thing that's been prohibitive to a lot of people to actually see. While, of course, there is the soundtrack. Most people can just stream it on Spotify for free. So there's that. But I was with you. My whole thing is like, yeah, I could listen to this without seeing the visual part, but I think I'd rather wait and see it while I hear it.
I think it does. Listening to soundtracks takes away some of it. Because being a part of play, it is an audio and visual experience that you're getting.
It's a different beast. And I wish I did have a friend of the show, Christy, here to talk about this, because she was in on the ground floor of this thing before it was even a Broadway show. She apparently was a big fan of Lynn's beforehand from his previous Broadway musical In the Heights. And then I guess followed kind of the saga of him basically introducing the idea of Hamilton in this like smaller form. Again, she could speak to this better than I can. I am only picking up information secondhand. And this was like late 2014. Like, this was really early on. And so she's basically followed the project every step of the way. So she's a huge, huge fan of it.
I was first familiar with it when Lin-Manuel Miranda sang it in front of President Obama.
Right. Around that
time. Did the early draft, I think. Yeah. One of the songs.
It did happen. So yeah, that's part of the whole, like, the legacy of this thing. Then I, thanks to friend of the show, Christy, actually got to see the show when it was down here at the Segerstrom in Costa Mesa. This was probably around May, either late May or early June of last year. 2 years ago, sorry.
It was 2 years, yeah.
So yeah, it was really cool to actually get to see it, and I finally got that experience. So now, flash forward to now, where we're able to all see the filmed version of it, which, as you said earlier, is kind of a stitching together of multiple shows so that you can get really cool angles, close-ups, and it's the original cast with Lin-Manuel Miranda as the lead character. So yeah, it's pretty much the ideal way of seeing it, and I think it's going to like bring the show to a lot more people. It's accessible now, finally, to the broad populace. So on that note, What'd you think?
With all that preamble out of the way,
yes,
the whole setup here, it was pretty phenomenal.
Okay.
I watched it 3 times.
Wow.
4 times.
It's Wednesday, right? So that means
yeah, and
you only had so many days.
I mean, like every day. Well, see, so I didn't watch it on the Friday it came out. Okay. I didn't watch it Saturday because 4th of July, obviously.
But you've watched it daily.
I watched it Sunday. I watched it Sunday, and then I watched it Monday, and I watched behind the scenes on Monday, and I watched it Tuesday.
So I was watching it right before we came on. Okay, so are you a musical person typically, or is this an exception to the rule?
I like Grease.
Ugh. Okay.
I was in musical theater in middle school. I saw a couple plays in high school productions. Was never a part of it. Mm-hmm. And so I have a passing fancy for it, I guess you could say. Okay. I do like going to the theater. I do like the idea of a live performance. I just haven't actually gone to it in a while.
Yeah, because it's an accessibility thing. It's a different thing than just going to see a movie around the corner. Mm-hmm. So what particularly was the thing that worked for you here? Was it the way that this was like choreographed and staged? Because one of the cool things I think about the show is the lighting, which I don't know necessarily comes across as well in the film version as it does on stage. Or was it the approach to music, where this is more of a hip-hop influenced musical, a lot of different styles of rap, a lot of callbacks to famous rap songs?
Well, as you know, I have a really big, I guess, fancy, you can call it, history buff.
Right, and then the history angle, yeah.
For sure. History angle it proposes. And so from there, from my first viewing, I really liked it from that aspect, and also from it being presented as a hip-hop musical in the musical aspect. Watching it a second time, I was watching the blocking and the lighting and all of that. Watching it a third time, I was like really invested into character motives at the time. Yeah. And so I think that's one thing that it gained from Disney Plus in having multiple watches, that you can pick up on all these additional things that you can, rather than seeing the play once. Like, wait, did that happen or did it happen this way?
Yeah.
What part came first?
Yeah.
And I think also having it on the Disney, also having it streaming and readily available, allows you to watch it with the up close angles than you would have, rather than from, say, a distance like most people would.
Yes. One thing I will say is that when I saw the show in real life, we were pretty far up. And so I had kind of a hard time making out faces and kind of really I think there is a bit of a disconnect when you're that far away, and I didn't bring my little, opera glasses either.
Binoculars.
Binoculars. But yeah, in this case, it does help to see close-ups of the characters, and it did help me notice some things I had never noticed before with a lot of the performances, which was cool. Mm-hmm.
One thing also that most people probably don't realize that they can do, but probably should, is once you've seen it once or twice, turn it on with subtitles, because you'll catch a lot of the banter and lyrical play going on that you normally wouldn't catch just by listening to it.
Because one of the things about it being a hip-hop style musical is that a lot of the dialogue goes very quickly.
Oh, Daveed Diggs goes very quickly.
Yes, specific characters for sure. And so you definitely have moments where you're like, wait, I missed that. And this
I caught 5 things, but I'm sure there's probably 10 other things that just went right by me.
Yeah, and honestly, all the Hamilton heads are probably looking at us and being like, well, you just need to listen to 100 times and you won't miss.
I believe they're called Hamil fans.
Oh, are they? I have no idea. No. Anyways, what I'm saying is that there are probably people out there who are like, oh, well, if you memorize the whole thing, if you listen to it enough, it's like, yeah, there's that, but yeah. So I thought that this was an interesting approach that they took to filming it. My take on it really early was, I wish this was more dynamic. And I feel like it got there, but in the first 30 to 45 minutes of the show, I didn't think it was shot that interestingly. I thought they would want. So my feeling is that this show has a different kind of energy than a lot of musicals does. It, because of that hip hop flavor, it, like, I feel like it's more kinetic and it moves a little bit more. And when you see it in real life, especially if you're seeing it from like kind of like an angle where you're seeing it from above almost, a lot of things are going on and a lot of movement is happening at the screen. And so I wish, or on the stage in that case, but on the screen in this case. And I think I wish that a lot more of it was more moved in that way a little bit more, was a little bit more kinetic. And I think it got there as the performance went on. But initially that was my thought. I was like, I kind of wish this was shot more like, maybe like a little bit more of a music video kind of energy. Because I think it was lacking a little of the movement that I felt in the music from the visuals.
Yeah, but I think that the visual cues that they represented and the way it was edited together were knitted well together between both of them. Highlighting right stage, left stage, making sure that you pull back for all the big lighting cues, all the big directional, and then pulling close up when people need it to be highlighted, when all the focus needed to be on them.
Yeah.
It is like you are not saying you're wrong, but you are pointing out a big factor that when you watch a play, you're watching the entirety of the play.
Right.
And whereas you're watching a film, sometimes, most of the time, it kind of narrows your vision to one character.
Yeah.
To one specific moment. And to so I think one angle rather than the whole picture that you would get in the stage play.
So I think, like, ultimately, I don't think it was an incorrect decision. I think they did the best with what they were able to do. It's just that I think that this is such a unique kind of sounding and looking show. I don't know if it was a match that really meshed in my mind. But that being said, I feel like most people will never even have that thought, because when it does get moving, it moves pretty impressively. So that was kind of my first take on it. And then by the end of it, I was like, okay, yeah, like they did what they needed to do. They shot this musical. And I think that ultimately the content here, the actual musical itself, is going to be, I think, the dividing line for a lot of people. Because what I've seen on social media this week has proven that there is a big division between how people feel about this thing.
Right. And seeing as you saw the play before you saw the film, I think you have a skewed version of the play that you saw in your mind versus what you saw on Disney Plus, whereas most people don't have that pre-knowledge vision of even probably the musical itself. Like they know of it but haven't listened to it. So the Disney Plus version is their introduction to it.
Yeah, so it'll be really interesting to see if, as time goes on, this is seen as the definitive version, and whether, because it was more accessible and more people saw it, it'll be really interesting to see like the legacy of this going forward, especially down the line when we do return to blockbuster movie seasons where regular releases are happening, and then maybe we see like maybe a re-release or something in theaters in 2021 or something. Where Disney wants to recapture the event part of it that they kind of lost here.
Well, I mean, you could be looking at like a Lion King aspect where you have the animated film, the Broadway version of the play, and then the most recent 2019 version that came out. 3 different versions of the same story, but depending on which one you're being first exposed to or have the most like connection with, could vary your take on the other 2.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot to talk about here. It's a multifaceted kind of thing. But I will say though is that it's an enjoyable time if you like musical theater, if you've been compelled to find out from family members or people on the internet that have told you about how great it is. I will say it's not for everybody. As with most musicals, I think that there's an element of kind of cheesiness that you have to get past, I think, for some people to enjoy it. I think a lot of people are going to see it's like, okay, rapping founding fathers, like, count me out. And so it's not going to be literally for everybody. Also, there's some muddy stuff about the historical representation here. There's been a conversation on social media this week about about whether or not we should be celebrating a figure who is maybe good in some ways, but maybe not so great in other historical ways. There's a conversation there. I think I didn't read what it was, but I think Lin-Manuel actually did release a statement over the last couple of days about the relationship of his characters and how he told the story with kind of the cloud of slavery and the kind of cloud of kind of the not so great elements of the founding father story.
It is brought up throughout the
it is mentioned.
Play. It is mentioned. So it wasn't like completely omitted.
So both the musical and the biography on which it's based do address slavery. They do address some kind of the not so great parts of Hamilton's character. There's a whole arc in the musical that does go over a mistake that he made, let's say, and how it affected him politically and personally. And it doesn't shy away from that content. I don't think that that's what people are saying. I think it's more like a big picture kind of thing. It's like, okay, the play as a work is celebrating this man. It's like saying that, yes, he did have flaws, but ultimately here's all the good stuff. And without spoiling the show for people who haven't seen it, there is a part at the end where someone close to him does kind of recap in a way of like, yeah, all this stuff happened, but here's what the man was, and here's why I'm proud of him, essentially. And so, yeah, like it has a bias. It has like a point of view that I think a lot of people are basically saying does not show the historical fullness of the character, of the actual man. And so, like I said, so there are grains of salt and there are barriers, I think, for some people to get really into this thing. But for what it is, for a musical that is about a historical figure, I think it's an enjoyable time with a fun soundtrack and a lot of cool moments.
Well, it is an entertainment medium.
Yes.
It's there to entertain you, not to either shame you or provide historical accuracy in a sense.
But I think it's really important, and it's something that I've always said here on the Media Boat Podcast. I think it's really important to be able to criticize something for things for the shortcomings it does have, but also be able to enjoy it. I think you can have both. I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Right.
Which we'll return to in a video game section later. Let's continue moving on, though.
Because, well, let's get to there by... what's our rating on Hamilton?
I'd say, well, we don't have any ratings here because everything's Stream It now.
So this is a Stream It?
It's a Stream It by default. You can't go see it, in fact.
Right.
You cannot. It's not in the theater.
Now, let's say they do a theatrical re-release of it, and it's safe to go back in theaters.
Would you buy a ticket? Into 2021, maybe. I bet they'll re-release it.
Would you buy a ticket to go see it in the theater?
I mean, yeah, Christy will probably want to, so probably.
Okay. Disney releases the sing-along version. Will you go to it?
Oh, she'll want to go to that.
Okay.
Version. I feel like, this decision is not in my hands. All right. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about television. And we always start the television section with sports. And some movement happened in sports this week. Some things, some news broke.
So people got paid.
Some people got paid. Some people got their schedules. Let's talk about it. First up, Jimmy Johnson, him of the Anything with an Engine, has now missed a NASCAR race because guess what? He tested positive for COVID-19.
Yes, this ends his streak of consecutive races. It puts him at 6th, I believe, at all time. He was on his way to be number 1, obviously. Wow. But yeah, this stops that streak. Unfortunate, but hey, the 6th most races, consecutive races. But yeah, that was unfortunate news because that came out like on Thursday right before they were running the weekend.
Right, so he immediately did not show up. He was just like, all right, I'm not going to be there. So, of course, we wish him a hopeful recovery, and we hope that him and
2 weeks, 2 weeks before he has to test positive twice in a row.
Right. We will see how he goes. Next up, football. When football starts, supposedly, they'll have a little bit of a change in the
decorum,
pre-game kind of ceremony kind of thing. So I guess before
pregame.
Yeah, the pregame. I don't know, like if there was a specific name for it.
It's called a pregame.
You're the pregame.
Most people pregame in the tailgate.
I thought the pregame was when you pound beers in the parking lot, but yeah, either way. So as you know, they usually play the national anthem before the game. Well, now they will not only do that. I'm assuming they're not removing the national anthem.
No, they're not removing the national anthem.
But they will also be playing the song "Lift Every Voice and Sing," a song commonly referred to as the Black National Anthem. That's in quotes. That's not me saying that. That's the story. During week 1 of the game, of the season, I should say. So I guess this is their little tiny concession to the Black Lives Matter movement.
This is them doing this instead of allowing players to wear any phrases or any like political movements on their uniforms.
Which is what the basketball is doing, right? Which is what
correct. Basketball has allowed them to do that.
Yeah.
I believe during warm-ups, but not during the actual game.
So, it's something small. It's not, I don't think, enough. I mean, obviously there was the whole elephant in the room of Colin Kaepernick still could play football that they probably should maybe think about. But besides that, here we are. It's something. It's something. Meanwhile, in football, Patrick Mahomes, Mahomie. The homie
paid.
Paid, exactly. Because
Mahomes got mo money.
Yep. Mo money, Mo Homes for 10-year deal for the Chiefs worth $503 million.
Yes, that's additional to the 2-year extension he signed, which puts him as a Kansas City Chiefs through 2031.
That's a long time to be a quarterback of any team.
It is currently the longest contract in the NFL. And one of 4 players only contracted into the 2030 plus season.
Wow, that's kind of crazy.
The other 4 players, baseball players, including Mike Trout.
I would imagine. Yeah, not football, that's for sure.
Yep.
This is crazy, but it's also a crazy amount of money. So Mahomes is going to buy a whole lot more homes, I think, after getting such a paycheck.
I think he allows him to buy a perma home.
Perma home, probably multiple at this point.
I mean, I would buy it now, so that way, should anything happen.
Yeah, because it's football. Anything can happen.
Yep. I believe 400 million of it is guaranteed. And then, as it gets later on, there are options to opt out on Mahomes' behalf.
Right.
If he wants to play for another team.
Which makes sense because he'll get older. He might not want to play. Like, that might be done, so we'll see.
Right. Pull an Andrew Luck.
Yeah, exactly. And lastly, last bit of football news is that in lieu of the big question mark about the actual season, we now at least know that they've canceled preseason.
They've canceled 2 games. They've canceled 2 games, narrowing it down to 2 preseason games. The NFLPA has already agreed that they are willing to let go of even those 2 remaining preseason games. It's up to the NFL if they want to as well.
Yeah.
So the players are on board with going straight into week 1. They will, of course, be practicing and doing exhibitions against themselves in their own training camps and leading up to week 1. But whether they want to play against other teams currently, it's been narrowed down to 2 teams for 2 weeks. Whether the NFL actually wants to have those 2 teams play, it's up to them now.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting how this all kind of, you see all these parallels between all of the leagues, and they're all doing different things, and it's hard to keep track of, but it's interesting nonetheless to see where they draw their lines.
Yeah. Well, I saw it broken down in a really interesting way, which was that in order to get to week 1 of just playing against someone else, it's 48 days.
Okay.
To play 4 games for 4 weeks of preseason, that's 28 days, 4 times 7. So seeing as we are running out of time
to
get in, and you break it down like that, it's a lot of days. And then you're playing against other people, which don't count towards anything. And if you catch something and you're out the first 2 weeks, possibly longer.
Right. It has ripple effects.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, honestly, this is probably smart, or at least smarter than what they were going to do. I think ultimately none of this is smart, and it's crazy that people are going to be expected to play games at all. But, if it's going to happen, at least they're taking some precautions.
Yeah, expect everyone to be like full-on gloves, long sleeves, full everything, no skin showing anywhere.
Yeah.
Turtlenecks.
Which brings us to a little bit of an update about another sport, baseball. So last week we said that it was a go for the 60-game season.
Mm-hmm.
That's still the case. Teams now have their schedules as of this past weekend. So you can see all of the things as we discussed in previous weeks. It's the first, I don't know, you know this better than I do, where it's like they've divided into there's cross league games, and then there's some interleague games.
You play a bulk of your season doing interleague games,
mm-hmm.
and then you play the counter league equivalent. So AL West plays NL West, South plays South, North plays North.
Yeah. And then there's the rule about that visiting teams can only visit one city in the same
Yeah, they're trying. I think that's how they worked it out.
Period of time or something.
Where if you're visiting, you only visit once.
Right.
But you play 4 games within that one span.
Yeah. So they figured it all out. So you can go on to the internet and see when your favorite team is playing. Down here in Southern California, the Angels are playing 18 straight games.
Yeah, I found this interesting that because they're playing 60 games in 90 days or whatever, in 80 days, that there's only 7 days where they don't have a game.
Which is crazy.
That's
so much hard work.
That's including ending a game, getting on a plane to play in a different city against a different team that next day.
Yeah, it's insane.
There's no travel breaks.
Yeah. So I took a look at the schedule here. Seems like the first of their first official games on the 24th, I believe.
Yeah.
Of this month, and then it kind of continues through there. They do have a series pretty early on against the Astros, which will be interesting. They end with a series against the Dodgers.
Also, for those of you out there, look up your local team, because you may be able to buy a big head space in the bleachers, in the stands, for your face in lieu of fans.
Yeah, so you can't go to the game, but you can at least put your face there, I guess, if you want. Also, it looks like there will be some sort of telecast for a lot of these games. Some very, very few games, but some games do have already have networks in which they will be shown. ESPN seems to have the rights to a handful of games, including that first Angels game, which is good for us.
Yes. However, it will
some of them as well. It seems
the ESPN deal will immediately ram against the NBA deal that they have, and they will prioritize NBA over the MLB.
Yes.
Because Disney owns both. But I wonder if you saw this or if you even noticed it, but most of the games being played in the MLB schedule are not day games.
Right.
They are night games.
Yes.
Which, does it really need to be a night game if no one's going to be there?
I think it probably is a TV thing. It's probably a TV thing because you're not going to get the ratings that you'd need for advertisers by showing a game in the middle of the day, especially a weekday.
Yes, but most of us are home, which we're going to have the TV on anyways.
You might be home, but you're still probably working, and they know that. And people who are working are less likely to have the game on and they're paying attention to those ads. It's all about that ad revenue.
Right, but there's several weekday games where there's not even one day game. Put one day game somewhere.
I did see a day game. I saw like an 11:35 in the morning game.
Right, but that was probably on a Saturday, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I was like, that's weird. Because I remember looking through his PM, and then there was like that 1 a.m. and I was like, 11:35? What a weird ass time. So yeah, look at your local listings. Speaking of local listings, I don't know if because of how slim the TV offerings are, I don't know if they're going to be offered at all to local providers. I assume they will be, and maybe those schedules just aren't out. So like, I don't know if your Fox Sports Wests, for example, will get to show some of these games. It doesn't, I don't know. This will be a big question mark, I think, until these games start airing.
I'm not sure either, but I did see a big opinion piece on not just MLB broadcasting, but sports broadcasting rights in general, and how those could be in flux for not just for this year, but for years on end, how ballooned they have become over the years.
So yeah,
that maybe they'll start cutting back.
The last thing I will say about the potential of broadcasting these games, though, is one thing we will miss. No, like, cutaways to in-stadium food. You won't have any. There's no in-stadium food. You can't show the frickin' chili dog being made.
You can't have someone with the camera walking around watching people, because there are no people to walk through the stadium.
Just watch just show some pitchers practicing in the bullpen. That's all you can do.
But we'll still get the rallying monkey.
Still get the rallying monkey somehow. He's there because you can't catch COVID. He's there.
Nope. Because if you make noise, he will come.
He will come. Just the thunder sticks. Dig him out. Dust him off. Anyway, let's move on because there's more things happening in sports. I have no idea what this next story means, so I'm going to let you have this one.
Oh, you're talking about Mickey Suda eating 48 hot dogs and buns? And Joey Chestnut eating 75 hot dogs and buns. Because this past Saturday was the Nathan's hot dog eating competition.
I was like, all you have here is he eats 48 HDB. And I'm like, what's HDB? What is this jargon? I've never seen this.
Hot dogs and buns.
Hot dogs and buns.
Yes.
Wow. Well, that's pretty impressive.
Both of those are records for the women's division and the men's division. A little bit of an asterisk there because these were not held outside in 90-degree heat, but rather indoors at the cool 75-degree temperature.
That being said, though, just seeing those numbers of hot dogs is giving me like indigestion. Like my stomach is just like lurching.
48 hot dogs in 10 minutes.
I can't eat 2 hot dogs in that amount of time and not feel miserable.
Well, that's because you're eating normal hot dogs. These are Nathan's hot dogs.
I don't think it matters.
That doesn't matter.
So, yeah, I don't know. Eating. Some people are good at it. Meanwhile, let's travel over to the Fight Island because UFC is going to have their first fights there.
Fight Island.
It's real. Fight Island is real. It is my friend. So they start fighting at Fight Island on Saturday.
Yep, Fight Island is happening. Some of the fighters have already shown up there because it's in Abu Dhabi. It's on Yas Island in Abu Dhabi.
Yas.
So they have to be there for the time change. But yes, we get Fight Island for the next 4 weeks, I believe.
We'll see. I mean, this is how the video game series Dead or Alive started. So probably the same thing here. There's going to be clones.
I think you mean Mortal Kombat.
Volleyball match. What was that?
A Mortal Kombat type tournament.
Right. Maybe like he'll pull a Tekken and somebody will get thrown into a volcano. We'll see. All right. Lastly, in sports here, soccer. The MLS tournament begins July 8th.
Yep. That's today.
Today. I was going to say that's today.
Yep. MLS teams have arrived in, what was it? The ESPN Sports Complex in Orlando, Florida. They're being hosted by Disney, so they will be staying in there. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, they're playing a tournament there. Also, real quickly, Matt, look up what the NBA players are eating on Twitter.
Eating?
Yeah. Because Fire Festival was trending yesterday.
Oh, I did see that Fire Festival was trending with NBA. And I didn't know what that meant.
That's why, because some of the food that these players are getting are not substantially up to par to feed a finely tuned athletic machine.
NBA best NBA food 2020 memes.
Yep.
Well, up later. Good to know. All right. Anything else in sports before we move on to television news?
That was the last thing I had for sports.
I think we covered it. Yeah, I think that was pretty thorough. All right. Moving on to television news. Our first story is epic crossover event between television and video games, as Amazon Studios has announced that it's acquired the television rights to the Fallout franchise, Bethesda's own Fallout games, which will be adapted into a show executive produced by Westworld creators Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy. Other executive producers include Bethesda's own Todd Howard and James Altman from Bethesda as well. Nolan and Joy are currently in pre-production on Amazon's techno-thriller drama The Peripheral, based on the William Gibson novel, which follows a woman in near-future America in which technology has started to subtly alter society. This all is done under the recent overall deal with Amazon Studios. So, Fallout TV series, will you watch it?
I'm going to hold judgment because I want to see how they do the Lord of the Rings TV series first.
Yeah.
Just see, because I like what they're doing with The Boys and with Jack Reacher and with, what was the other one? Upload. So they have some good stuff on there that I like. I haven't delved like entirely into their exclusives. I'm not like all in on it like I was with Netflix when they started doing all their exclusives. But this does sound exciting. It sounds interesting.
Exciting might be, yeah. Interesting is probably the better word. I don't know if exciting qualifies because I don't know if it's just Fallout burnout or burnout overall on shows about post-apocalypses. But like between this and the TV adaptation of The Last of Us that's happening, it just all seems so samey. Like I'm just I can see the show already in my head. I can see the beats. Like it opens where the person's coming out of the vault for the first time.
No, it opens with them going into the vault.
Oh yeah, good point. Into the vault. Then you have like the first couple episodes are about the inside the vault. And he gets out because of whatever reason.
For some reason, it opens up one reason or another.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like I feel like it's so color by numbers at this point to adapt a game like Fallout. The reason why Fallout works is because it's a video game. Because you are making these decisions and affecting the landscape with these decisions you're making. With a TV show, it becomes a little bit more rote. And I worry that it's going to lose that fun part of Fallout. And it's just going to be dark and dreary and Walking Dead-ish. And it's just not going to be fun.
You could say same thing about The Witcher.
And I heard that ended up being okay. I feel like a lot of people liked that adaptation of The Witcher. But The Witcher has the advantage of being in a world where magic can happen, right? Whereas Fallout is just dreary techno.
It's techno magic.
Yeah, there's no fantasy to it. There's not a fantasy. In fact, it's like anti-fantasy in a way where it's like, no, everything's gone to shit. Like, it sucks here. Like, we all hate it. I don't know. And then the aesthetic is already built into the thing. So it's like, oh, you're going to get your classic, like, old crooners on the radio. You're going to see the Vault Boy on everything. You're going to get your Nuka-Cola signs and, like, pinup girls. It's, I don't know. I could not be less excited for an adaptation of...
Let's get Chris on here. He's excited about it, right?
Oh, I'm sure there are people who are jazzed about this thing. But I don't get it. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, we got something to look forward to then.
I mean, it's on Amazon. I'm not going to be watching it anyways. So let's move on to our second story here. Because everything gets a reboot, here's our newest reboot, The Wonder Years.
You mean the Blunder Years?
No, The Wonder Years, the original ABC classic. So ABC has handed a pilot production commitment to The Wonder Years, a new iteration of the network's 1980s family comedy drama. It comes from Dave, executive producer Saladin K. Patterson, Empire co-creator Lee Daniels, yes, of The Butler.
Of The Butler, Lee Daniels. The
original series' breakout star Fred Savage, of course, because he has to be involved, and 20th Century Fox Television. The new incarnation of Wonder Years chronicles how a middle-class black family in Montgomery in the turbulent late 1960s, the same era, of course, as the original series, made sure it was the Wonder Years for them, too. Savage will direct the potential pilot. He and Patterson executive produce the half-hour project with Lee Daniels Entertainment, Daniels himself, and Mark Velez. Savage's recent directing credits include the ABC comedy series Modern Family, The Conners, and Single Parents. Yeah, this is kind of his second career, you could say, has been directing for television. So it makes sense that Savage himself would be involved. So what are your thoughts about bringing back the Wonder Years? Do you have any nostalgia for watching repeats of the Wonder Years when you were younger?
I have nostalgia for the opening. I'm sure that I watched it because I remember the opening so vividly. However, like the actual, any plot relevance to it, no. Yeah. I just know that it's a thing.
We watched it a little bit when I was younger. I watched it enough to get the idea of what it was. Mm-hmm. And I do like, there's some show that did a really good parody semi-recently, and I forget what it was, but where like an entire episode opens in like a Wonder Years pastiche. Which I wish I could remember what show that was. But yeah, it's a very seminal thing because everybody's like, oh yeah, there's the narration through the whole thing. And like, it's a very like specific kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see a different take on it. I like that they're changing it up and focusing on a Black family this time. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Are you okay with the same time frame of being the late 1960s? I think it opened in the opening scene is 1968.
Well, think of it this way. If you did it the same way as it was in the 80s, 20 years ago, that show would be about the 90s, or it would be about the late 90s.
And I would be fine with that.
I think if you're going to still call it the Wonder Years, I think you base it in the same time period. Because I think people are still nostalgic for that period of time. And also, it allows them to tell the story of a Black family during the Civil Rights Movement, which I think is still relevant today.
Right, but you could also set it in the Wonder Years and start it off with, say, the Rodney King riots.
Yeah, you could.
And then you move on through the years and end it with the O.J. Simpson trial. No, like over the course of a series, not the season.
No, I realize that there are other periods of time that I think would be relevant for the kind of story they want to tell, but I also don't see a problem with them returning to the 60s. Okay. Like, there's probably still some angles that they wouldn't have been able to tell with the original series that they can tell here. Anywho, that's it for me. Television news. That's what we're talking about. Television.
Yep.
You have here that you watched a television show.
I watched a television show on a whim last night.
Okay.
Scrolling through Netflix, trying to figure out what to watch. Something new popped my eyes. The Babysitter's Club.
Okay. Real quick. Do you have any whatsoever background with the original Babysitter's Club books that these are based on? You had a little sister.
Yes.
You still have a little sister, I should say. She did not go away. She's not disappeared at some point. Did she read these books in her youth? Were you around Babysitter's Club books?
I was around them. I probably read them in like elementary school, but never had like an affinity towards them.
Okay.
I'm sure they were collected at some point, but I don't like have any direct stories that I can recall to them. Mm-hmm. I believe I did watch the movies that were based on them.
Sure.
Because, of course, that's something I watched.
So on a whim, you were just like looking through Netflix and you're like, oh, I've heard of the Babysitter's Club. Let's put this on.
It was like number 3 on the trending thing. I was like, yeah, sure, why not?
So I've heard okay things about this. I hear it's pretty well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In short, yeah, it is really well done. It kind of threw me off in the second episode when they changed narrators.
Yeah. I mean, the books were also from multiple perspectives.
But then I realized that, yeah, that's from the books, the multiple perspectives. And then it changed narrators again for the third and then the fourth episode. I was like, oh, yeah, these are all just based off the books, which are different aspects and different, different childhood growing ups. Yeah. Fictional series.
Right. So my older sister was a huge fan of these books. She had
right. My wife is a huge fan.
a lot of them. Yeah, they're about around the same age, so that checks out. She had like the huge like bookstore thing where it's like this wide. I mean, it's wider, but I only have so much screen.
Right, the Scholastics thing.
Like thing where you got it from the Scholastic thing. It was just the whole, not the whole series, but maybe the whole series up to that point. And yeah, she loved those things. Like she just devoured those books. So I was around them. Like we were young enough where there would be times where like, either my mom would read them to her or she would want to read them to us, and like, cute little kid stuff. And I did remember watching some of the adaptations, whether it be movies or I want to say there was a TV series at one point. Because I have this vague recollection of a theme song that may or may not have existed that maybe I need to YouTube, because I'm pretty sure there was a theme song. So yeah, I'm pretty familiar with the Babysitter's Club.
Okay.
So I don't know. I might check this out. We'll see.
It's fun. I mean, I did get a weird question of why am I watching this?
It's not necessarily for us, I guess you could say.
No, but I watched it for the podcast and because it's new, right. And because I think I saw it trending on Twitter at one point. So it's like, oh, this is like in the current pop culture zeitgeist.
Yeah.
Of the week or month or whatever.
It seems like does a good job of adapting a kind of old at this point, like 30-year-old franchise now.
80s.
I guess even older than that, for a new, more savvy audience, I guess, for like younger kids.
And it kind of does that too, because like one of the first like overarching themes, or not themes, but I guess not. What am I thinking of here? Why am I drawing blank on antagonists? One of the first antagonists is technology, and how like even though like these girls are supposed to be like middle school and like have like updated technology, like they still rely on old outdated landlines. That's a joke they bring up, like, do we need a landline? Well, no one else is going to have a landline. Okay, we're getting a landline. And also, what's a landline?
Right.
And then how they're competing with like the high school versions who have current technology, have updated cell phones, can put together a YouTube video for advertising, can basically pump out swag for everyone, and like be hyper competitive of these middle schoolers versus high schoolers aspect. At the same time, growing up and finding who you are in middle school.
Yeah, no, that seems good. I'm glad that there's good stuff out there for young girls like this.
Yes. I did get a weird question of between me watching this show and watching Diary of a Future President. Why I'm watching middle school girls television shows.
Hey, you know what? Like different perspectives are healthy, and it helps you live a more well-rounded life. That's what I say.
Well, because I was also watching Star versus the Forces of Evil and Amphibia.
Yeah.
So,
all sorts of, it's like variety. Variety is the spice of life. That's what I say. It's a good, balance for the frickin' Fallout show, I think. You gotta balance your, like...
Well, I gotta balance it out for when Umbrella Academy Season 2 comes out at the end of the month.
Exactly. You'll get your gritty superhero apocalypse stories, balance them out with fun junior high stories. Everything needs a balance,
Yep.
Anyway, let's move on to cancellations and renewals.
All right, what am I no longer watching?
Well, there's more renewals than cancellations this week. Let's start from the top here. Speaking of reboots, Beavis and Butthead will be getting their second, yes, count that, second reboot on MTV. The first one was back in 2011, believe it or not. Already in itself about a decade old. Mm-hmm. This time they will be getting 2 seasons coming to Comedy Central instead of MTV. And yes, brand new Beavis and Butthead episodes. Mike Judge will be involved. It seems like a lot of the creative team.
This is part of the adult animation boom that's been going on for the past couple of years.
Yeah. So If you're nostalgic for the original run of Beavis and Butthead, well, here's more.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of nostalgia for animated shows of yesteryear, Clone High, the cult show that some people know as the origin of Phil Lord and Chris Miller, is coming back as well. Originally, I think somewhere in the early 2000s, I
believe something like that, yeah. This originally had one season.
Right.
And then ended on a cliffhanger.
Very short-lived, but it will return for another season again on Comedy Central. So
yeah, it's unsure if this is going to be a sequel or a reboot.
Right.
But because of the way they ended the first season, they could totally do a sequel boot.
Yeah. And not too dissimilar from our conversation that we had earlier about Hamilton, this also deals with historical figures.
Yes.
So it'd be interesting to see how they approach historical figures in this day and age.
And if you want to see all of Clone High, I believe all episodes are available on YouTube.
Yeah, you can just YouTube that show. A friend of the show, Christy, also a big fan of this show, and it's on our list for some point me to watch it because I've never seen it. So
it's hilarious.
Yeah, I've heard it's good. So
yeah, what was it? I think after Lego Movie, I went back into Lord Miller's old stuff and I was like, oh, Clone High. Hey, it's all on YouTube. Let me watch all of this.
I believe it also has some DNA of that led to Scrubs, as the creator of Scrubs, I believe, was also
Lawrence, I believe.
Yeah, something Lawrence. I forget his first name, but he was also producer on that show. So him and a lot of other talent that would later work on Scrubs and his other shows also started here.
Bill Lawrence.
Yeah, I think. So it's this interesting kind of like crossroads where all these other creatives kind of went throughout the rest of the 2000s. All right.
It's like looking back at Freaks and Geeks.
Yeah, exactly. Moving on. Next up, Netflix is bringing back Never Have I Ever for a second season. Hulu is bringing back The Great for a second season.
Oh, great.
Netflix has announced that the third season of The Kaminsky Method will be its final season. CW is canceling Katie Keene after one, let me tell you, very weak first season. I was not a fan of this. It started strong and had some promise, but ultimately got bogged down and just the characters are kind of boring and the stories didn't go anywhere. I dropped off mid first season, and yeah, not surprised this thing is not coming back. Netflix reviving Dead to Me, a show that was originally not a Netflix show, was buried in network TV again in the early 2000s for a third season. So fans of that show will be happy to see it continue. And for at least one more season, because I believe that will be it. Yeah, they're only doing one more.
I think that was originally supposed to be a movie that they just changed it to a series.
To a series, yeah. And then CW is bringing back DC Stargirl, a current success for them, for a second season.
I think that was on what was previously a DC Universe exclusive, but is moving to CW for everybody.
Right. They're moving it to network after, being a DC Universe exclusive. And Netflix, lastly, is bringing back The Last Kingdom for a fifth season. I don't know what that is.
Well, apparently it's not the last season.
Not the last season of The Last Kingdom. It continues. Let's talk about deaths. We got some rough ones this week, unfortunately. First off, Bettina Gillois, sorry. The French is not in me. Age 58, a screenwriter responsible for Bessie, Glory Road, and McFarland, USA. Mm-hmm. Then we have the two big ones this week. Ennio Morricone, age 91, a film composer, arguably the most famous film composer, responsible for classics such as The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Once Upon a Time in the West, The Hateful Eight, more recently. Basically created the sound we think of when we think of Western, like especially the spaghetti Western. Exactly, he's famous for that specific song. Among a lot other very famous like songs we associate with the films set in the West. Mm-hmm. Won an Oscar for The Hateful Eight back in 2016. So there you go. And then lastly, Charlie Daniels, Hall of Fame country singer-songwriter, responsible, of course, for The Devil Went Down to Georgia, Uneasy Rider, among others. Won a Grammy back in 1980. And the guy you think of when you think of country fiddle.
That was a big loss in this household when the news broke. It's like, oh no.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we cursed 2020 for other reasons too.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. It just keeps piling up on to old 2020.
Yep.
And let's pivot then into music, where we could first talk about the Billboard.
And we start the Billboard with the Hot 100, your singles chart. Right. And at number 1, once again, Rockstar, by Duh Baby, featuring Roddy Ricch. At number 2, Oh What's a Poppin' by Jack Harlow. But I want to say it's Duh Baby again, taking the number 1-2 slots. Or you could say it's from Tori Lanez or by Lil Wayne, because all 4 of them are on this song.
Is it Lanez or Lanes?
Lanez.
I've always read it Tory Lanez.
It's probably Tory Lanez, but it's Lanez. At number 3, Blinding Lights by The Weeknd. Number 4, Savage by Megan Thee Stallion featuring Beyonce. And at number 5, Roses by St. John.
Yeah, so just one new
there
song.
on the top 5.
Top 5 this week.
As for your albums chart, your Billboard 200. Once again at number 1, My Turn by Lil Baby. At number 2, Just 'Cause Y'all Waited. 2 by Lil Durk. Mm-hmm. At number 3, Blame It On Baby by Da Baby. At number 4, Hollywood's Bleeding by Post Malone. And number 5, After Hours by The Weeknd.
Yeah.
Lil Durk, the only new one up there.
So yeah, glacial pace. The Billboard charts are moving glacially lately.
Well, this is what happens in the summer, though. It always moves slow.
Guess so.
But hey, if you don't like any of those albums, we have new releases.
All right.
First up is Healing is a Miracle by Juliana Barwick. We also have That's How Rumors Get Started by Margo Price. Dropped Frames, Volume 1 by Mike Shinoda.
Will you be checking that one out?
Probably. He's been putting little stuff out. He even did like a whole Twitch stream of the album.
Yeah.
Last week, I believe.
Okay.
But yeah, he's been putting out like little demos here and there of it. I believe they are all video game concepts.
I was going to say the name Dropped Frames definitely made me think of video games.
That's why I was on Twitch, and I've been seeing, because I follow him, I've been seeing him post like, hey, this is a thing from this old video game.
Okay.
Yeah. We also have The Waterfall 2 by My Morning Jacket. Yes, that My Morning Jacket.
I guess so.
We also have Unfollow the Rules by Rufus Wainwright. Jump Rope Gazers by The Beths. XOXO by The Jayhawks. And None of Us Are Getting Out of This Life Alive by The Streets.
I mean, that's correct. They're not wrong.
I mean, yeah, if it's by The Streets, you're definitely not getting out of this alive. All right, let's get into some music and news, shall we?
Shall we? There's a fun story and a not so fun story.
Well, as we noted, Margo Price has a new album coming out. That's How Rumors Get Started. Mm-hmm. And she is making sure that her fans in her hometown of Nashville don't have to go out for dinner or for her new LP when her third album comes out on Friday. She's endeavoring to support several local restaurants as well as Grimey's Records to offer delivery of breakfast, lunch, and dinner packages that include a slab of vinyl as a substantial side to go with the breakfast tacos, Korean fried chicken, and collard greens. not to leave it at that, she'll also be delivering a live set of music from her, quote, favorite local dive bar in Nashville, Dee's Country Cocktail Lounge. Although this too will be available for home delivery only, as the 7 p.m. show will be streamed without an audience in tow at the club. Fans outside of the Metro Nashville area will only be able to dream about the winner chicken dinner, chili honey barbecue chicken, and other offerings being delivered by Mas Tacos, por favor, for breakfast, Babo Korean Bar for lunch, and Cafe Rose for dinner, as delivery is limited to a 3-mile area. So you get dinner and a show.
If you live in Nashville.
If you live in Nashville
2 miles of where this is happening.
It is a very limited range.
I thought this was cute. I thought this was a nice thing to do for her diehard fans.
It's smart. I'll give it that.
Pretty good deal too. If you looked at the prices, like records by themselves are not cheap. So like to get a record and a meal for like $35 is not bad.
$35 for breakfast and then $65 for dinner, which that dinner's going to feed 2 or 3 people. Yeah, that's a pretty good deal.
Not bad at all.
I mean, Margo Price is their 3rd album. So, yeah, if you're a fan, this is a no-brainer.
So if you're a
dinner and a show.
If you're a listener in the Nashville metropolitan area and you do this, let us know. Send us an email. Tell us how it goes.
Yeah, send an email to mediaboatpodcast@gmail.com. Do note that you will need an actual device to play this on, though.
Yeah. I'm sure if somebody is a Margo Price fan living in Nashville to hear about this, they probably own a record player. This is my guess.
I'm just saying that you just get the vinyl. You're not getting a record player with it. It's just the vinyl. Or rather, sorry, it's not just the vinyl. It's a side of vinyl. Yeah. The vinyl is on the side. It's not the main dish.
Don't eat the record. I don't recommend you eat it. It's not good for you to eat.
It may be a bit rubbery.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Anyways, our second story has to deal with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Well, the 35th annual Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony will be replaced with an exclusive HBO special due to the ongoing pandemic. It is the first time in history, or at least in the past 35 years, that the ceremony has had to be canceled. Earlier this year, we noted that Depeche Mode, the Doobie Brothers, Whitney Houston, 9 Inch Nails, the Notorious B.I.G., and T-Rex were announced as the Hall's 2020 inductees. The Ahmet Erdogan Award recipients included Irving Azoff and Bruce Springsteen's manager, John Landau. The program will be available on HBO and to stream on HBO Max Saturday, November 7th at 8 p.m. And it will replace the live ceremony that was originally scheduled back on May 2nd.
So yeah, we kind of knew that they were going to have to cancel the actual show, so it's not super surprising. The interesting part is that they've whipped together some sort of special to show on HBO, which I'm really curious about what that will be.
Well, they have until November 7th, so it'll be interesting to see if they get everyone together to perform something, or, as they've done in the past, get other bands together to perform their songs as they're being inducted, and then just have them somewhere either accepting the award or have someone from, say, the lead person, or in this case, Whitney Houston's estate, accept the award via a Zoom call, Skype, what have you.
Yeah, this gives them some time to figure it out, figure out what they can do, what they have time to do, who can do things right now, because probably it's hard for a lot of people to do performances with their whole band, I would imagine, at the moment.
Well, especially if you don't have the actual instruments at home and like rely on, say, a studio or somewhere else like a venue to provide those with you.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, do you have any music to talk about? Any thoughts? I didn't have anything new this week, so
I've not listened to new music for the past month.
Well, I guess that does it then. Let's move on then into video games where there is stuff to talk about.
All right, well, let's start with new releases then, shall we? As first up, we have Sword Art Online, Alicization Lycoris for the PlayStation, Xbox, and PC.
Got it.
What?
Authorization Licorice. Got it.
No, it's not licorice. It's Lycoris.
Oh, it's licorice. So it's not
like Icarus.
It's similar.
Yeah, it's a thing in Sword Art Online. Don't ask me how I know.
Oh wait, you actually have some knowledge here. Okay, I was like, this is gibberish to me.
I'm sure it is gibberish to you.
No clue. Anyway.
But it continues the long tradition of colons in names.
Yes.
Which I'm sure we'll get to. Yep, we will have another colon in the name.
We'll have more colons.
Yep, because Deadly Premonition 2, A Blessing in Disguise is available for the Switch.
Yep, this week.
We also have F1 2020 for the PlayStation, Xbox, and PC.
Fast cars.
Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon 2 for the PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC.
So real quick, for people who are rightfully confused about the Bloodstained games, this is a sequel to the 8-bit looking side-scrolling one, not the hand-drawn HD one that was the other Bloodstained game that was a bigger deal. This is a smaller thing, which is why they were able to make a sequel so fast.
Okay. We also have Death Stranding coming to the PC. Neon Abyss for the PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC. Rocket Arena for the PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. And because you love colon so much, Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town for the Switch and PC.
If the phrase Friends of Mineral Town sounds familiar to you, you might be a Harvest Moon fan. This is a spiritual remake of that game. I say spiritual because of many weird rights handling issues over the last decade with the Harvest Moon franchise. The developers of the original game, which I believe was a PSP game, are no longer able to call it Harvest Moon.
I believe Harvest Moon is still currently being used. Right. That's why.
But by a different license holder. So this is that game, but with the Harvest Moon name and stuff pulled out of it. That's my understanding about it. If you are a listener who are yelling at their screen or podcast right now saying I'm wrong, please write in and correct us, please. It's very complicated.
All right. Well, let's get to some video game news before we get to some video game thoughts. Warner Interactive is in the news because Xbox may be interested in buying the company as it's behind Batman, Arkham Knight, Mortal Kombat, and the Lego game series.
Among others.
AT&T has reportedly been considering selling off Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, which it wholly owns as part of its Warner Media subsidiary, as a way to reduce some of its debt. According to a new report from The Information, Microsoft has emerged as a new potential buyer for the division. If Microsoft does end up making the purchase, that could place well-established studios such as Arkham's Rocksteady, Mortal Kombat's NetherRealm, Lego's Telltale Games, and Middle-earth: Shadow of War's Monolith as the newest Xbox game studios. It's important to note that many of Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment's best-known franchises are based on licensed IPs from other companies, mainly Lego. And was it the Hobbit games? Yeah, Lord of the Rings.
The Middle-earth games.
Middle-earth games, yeah. Well, there's also DC games as well.
Yeah. Most of the things Warner makes, turns out, except for Mortal Kombat, and that's pretty much it.
Right. Those licenses won't necessarily transfer over in the purchase of the company. Individual agreements could be made, but the bottom line is that even if the studios do become part of Microsoft, the future of Batman, Harry Potter, and Lord of the Rings games won't necessarily follow.
Yeah.
Because those are IP that Warner owns and something that they license out to themselves.
Right. So there would have to be renegotiations if this happened. So as you know here, we don't usually talk about stuff that's not confirmed, but this story is an exception because Microsoft has made it very public that they're interested in purchasing the company. And Warner has also made it very public that they are up for sale. Like there's nothing behind closed doors about this. It's probably going to happen. So when it does, it'll probably work like their previous deals have, where anything currently in development will probably still be able to happen with very little changes. So they'll still be able to put this supposed Harry Potter game out that's been leaked recently. They'll still be able to put out whatever Rocksteady's been working on next. Like that stuff will probably not be stopped, and it will continue to be multi-platform. Right. But what Microsoft is buying here is they're buying the talent, these really talented studios for whatever their next project will be. So they're potentially going to have, like Monolith, whatever Monolith does after like the next Lord of the Rings thing, or whatever Rocksteady does after the next DC Comics related thing, and potentially some sort of Lego thing, with Traveler's Tales. Like there's a lot of options here. But the crown jewel, in my opinion, of this purchase is Mortal Kombat. This is getting them exclusive rights to Mortal Kombat, which would be a big boon for them, no pun intended. So yeah, it could be pretty cool. Like to have this, like it's a big selling franchise and could be really lucrative for them. Also, Mortal Kombat versus Killer Instinct could be a thing that happens now.
I don't know. I mean, they did allow DC characters to cross over into Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
So it's not like a absurd thing to think of.
So it makes a lot of sense. Microsoft can afford to do it, and it's a really good stable of developers to have on their team. So I don't see any reason for them not to do it.
I wonder if like some of the teams maybe want to go over to Microsoft or not go over to Sony and be part of their studio.
Sony's got to pony up the money then.
Right, but that's the thing though, that if they sell off the whole thing, is it just one big company, or can they sell off like these to one people, this to one person,
so my understanding is that these studios are wholly owned by Warner. So if the Warner purchase happens, they go with them. I think what we've seen in the past with companies like what happened to Midway and what happened like way back in the day, where things kind of split into different franchises. I think that came out of the fact that there was not one buyer that wanted it. That was from liquidation after bankruptcy. That's not what's happening here. This is basically AT&T saying like, we don't want this. We're not going to just wait until they basically self-implode. We're just going to sell it for whole cloth. So you're not going to see a auction of IP like you've had with other things. Everything is going to go with the person who buys it. It's winner take all. So no, you're not going to get any of the specific studios elsewhere. If Microsoft buys it, they get all of them.
So it's like a cable bundle?
Yeah, kind of.
You get one Viacom channel, you get them all.
Get them all. Exactly.
I don't know how I feel about that. I like the creative diversity. But as we've seen in the past 3 years or so, Microsoft and Sony have created their own umbrella corporations for all these brands.
It makes sense for what Microsoft's been doing for the last few years. To make a lot of sense.
Yep.
All right.
Our last story here follows EVO. As following allegations of abuse against organizer Corey Cuellar.
Well,
EVO 2020.
Those who don't know, is a fighting game tournament.
Well, you may not need to know that any longer because EVO 2020 has been canceled.
Yeah.
Likewise, Mr. Joey is no longer associated with the event, with Tony Cannon stepping in as acting CEO. In a statement shared to Twitter, the company says they'll be issuing refunds for badges and donating what they've raised to Project Hope, an international health and humanitarian organization. This comes on the heels of multiple studios pulling out of the event, including these studios or these games, including Dragon Ball Fighters, or Fighter Z, and Tekken 7 publisher Bandai Namco. The recently mentioned Mortal Kombat 11 studio, NetherRealm, Street Fighter 5 studios, Capcom, and Them's Fightin' Herd studio, Main 6.
Yeah.
Earlier today, Cuellar was placed on administrative leave as allegations of misconduct were made on Twitter. So this is the end of EVO.
For this year. They're restructuring the company, it sounds like. They're figuring out, they're trying to apologize to fans and figure out what the next steps are for the tournament as it continues in future years. And the fighting community is kind of grappling with it right now. Again, no pun intended. I think ultimately this was the right call. I think after you have these major companies basically pulling out of the thing, you had no choice but to cancel it. You can't have EVO without Street Fighter. What is it then?
It's Smash Brothers.
If you're only going to have Smash Brothers, then that's not EVO, that's just Smash Brothers. And Nintendo also probably would have been very quick. It's important to note, Smash Brothers was not officially in EVO this year. Right. If it had been, Nintendo probably would have pulled it too. So yeah, you saw very quick movement on this thing. This whole story basically took place in about 24-hour period. It's very quick. It was already going to be an online only event anyways this year, so it was already a write-off. Kind of like real sports, there were going to be asterisks next to all these winners anyway.
Right.
So it's not a big deal. The fighting game community relatively understands, but they also take their fighting seriously, and they also wanted action quick about the things that this guy was discovered to have done.
It's a different kind of fighting that they have to kind of do now.
So yeah, I think ultimately they did the right thing, but it's going to take a lot of work, I think, on these people's behalf to regain the trust of the fighting community, and hopefully they're going to work on it.
Mm-hmm. And last bit of news real quick, NBA 2K revealed their latest or their final cover athlete for their Legacy Edition, and that is that of Kobe Bryant. Noted, he's already been a cover athlete for the Legacy Edition back in 2010. Right.
So
2011.
This story was almost my second story. I wanted so badly to include 3 stories this week because this one's equally as big. Not necessarily for that reason, but because of the other side of the story, which is UK wants to charge $70 for the standard edition of NBA 2K21.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are seeing this as the first sign that there is a strong possibility that if other developers follow suit, the average video game price could be going up to $70 for the new generation.
Right, especially since there were prices for Xbox, and Xbox is doing the, what's it called, Play Forward? Play Pass?
Something delivery. Smart delivery.
The forward delivery for if you buy it this generation, you get it next generation.
Make a football move.
Right.
Yeah. And so I guess it's their way of kind of like insurance in a way of being like, well, if we're going to do the extra work to port this thing to next gen and make these improvements, then let's up all the prices $10. It's a scary precedent.
Yes, but do realize that this game will still be riddled with microtransactions everywhere.
Yeah. And that's kind of the other side, why like some people are saying like, hey, wait until other companies talk, because this is a series that has a history of being this machine for microtransactions. And so some people are being like, oh no, they just want a nickel and dime the people who are going to buy this anyways. NBA 2K is also a game that routinely becomes very, very cheap and or maybe free within months of its release. In fact, NBA 2K20 is free this month on
for a PlayStation.
Yeah. So it goes to show you that really, who knows if we can trust this as a bellwether of the times. But it seems like it started a conversation, which might get other developers and publishers thinking about the possibility of upping their games to $70 as well.
Maybe, but also do realize that these sports games are seasonal games. Either you buy it when the season begins or within the first couple of months. But with NBA, it's usually a Christmas present because their season begins November into December.
Yeah.
Even though the game comes out in September.
Yeah.
Yeah, but these are seasonal games, and that's why you'll see them priced high initially for the first half of their season, and then immediately drop in the back half.
They know people will want to be part of the zeitgeist of when it releases, when the season is new and fresh, and you want to be talking about the game while there's real games happening, and that's a small window. So yeah, they know that people are going to pony it up.
Yep.
Anyways, anything else to say about that story before we move on to some brief thoughts here?
No, just that the Kobe Bryant Legacy Edition costs $99.
Yeah.
But you'll be getting the next gen basically when it comes out, a code for it when it comes out.
Yep.
But okay, so that's it for video game news. That gives us the remaining of our time here to talk about The Last of Us Part 2, which we got into briefly last time.
Yeah. So this still isn't going to be our big conversation. I'm going to hold off until I finish the game. Okay. That may take a while, though, because I have extremely limited time that I can play a video game when I'm not working, when I have access to the television, and when I'm not on the phone, is maybe 2 or 3 hours, maybe twice a week.
How is it on your 4K, though?
So so I just wanted to get that across before I jumped in.
Okay.
So that's why I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about my impressions, but I've played the first about 4 to 5 hours of the game. For your reference, I will say I'm to the point where I experienced some of the open world stuff in Seattle.
Okay, so you're in Seattle.
I have been captured.
Okay.
I stopped playing right after I have made an attempt to escape, and I'm about to battle my first battle with people with guns.
Okay, so you're still in day 1 then.
Right. That's why I'm like kind of getting that ahead of time, just saying like I'm sure scratching the surface. I am not even close to getting into the meat of the game. I understand that the big stuff happens later, so I'm going to withhold kind of my broader judgments about the narrative for a later conversation. So what I'll say so far about what I've experienced in these first handful of hours, it sure looks good. Like, it is a beautiful looking game. I mean, if you want something that looks like realism, this is probably the closest we've gotten. Like, the fidelity on that 4K TV with HDR is incredible. Like, I'm just in awe of the scenes where you're on the horse and you're just moving through kind of the greenery. Because each individual leaf is like textured and like everything moves like it would, and just the sunlight coming through the trees is pretty spectacular. The game looks great. The technology, unparalleled. I mean, Naughty Dog's also always been their biggest thing has been their technology, and it never ceases to amaze. Like, they're pulling out all the stops in this, just like the way that glass breaks when you throw a brick through it, like the way that there's little details in every.
How about those rope physics?
The rope physics, like the fact that like you realistically feel the tension when you pull back on the rope that has an end. Just little details like that are Naughty Dog's bread and butter, and they're in full display here. As for playing the game, I'm a little bit more mixed on it so far. It reminds me a lot of that first game. It seems like they're using a lot of the same rhythms and quirks of that first game's experience, almost to a scary T for me, where I'm like, oh man, this is just the same kind of thing. Like I said, though, I'm not to a lot of new experiences that I'm sure will happen. At least I hope will happen later in the game. But so far, in the first 5 hours or so, it feels like I'm in 2013 again, and I don't know if that's a good thing. It's very much a same kind of experience that I got from the first time around, where it's these like the same kind of stealth encounters, the same kind of, maintaining your inventory and your ammo, building things, leveling up your abilities. The same kind of breaks where you're just looking through these abandoned buildings, and the same kind of puzzles that you're solving, whether it be plugging in a generator or finding a gate code and entering the gate code. It just feels very rote, and I keep waiting for it to do something new. And even that open world period, which is ostensibly the new thing that it does, at least compared to the first game, was kind of already done in Uncharted 4 and feels very similar, even though it's a horse this time and not a car. To me, it feels very similar to what I had already done in Uncharted 4. So that's kind of my feeling about it so far. Like, I'm wowed by the visuals, and again, I'll keep my story talk until later because I don't know where it's going. But as for the game that I'm playing, I am not that thrilled so far. It's very what I expected it to be, and I'm not wowed.
I mean, I get that. There's not a whole lot of like new weapons you can introduce. I mean, it's stealth and gunfire.
It's almost beat for beat the same thing as the first game in a way so far, where I feel like it's a lot set up in the same way, where I'm getting the same items and like progression at the same times I got in the first game. Like, I just got the revolver and I was like, this is too reminiscent of when I got the revolver in the first game.
Right, but I will note that Ellie having the knife and having to deal with shivs and using shivs is
a big quality of life improvement.
Yeah,
I'm glad. I can't imagine going back to having to worry about that, because that was my least favorite part about the first game. It's the thing that created the most, like, having to do the same encounter over and over thing in the first game was definitely having to make sure I had a shiv for the clickers.
Mm-hmm. Or even using a shiv to open a door. Do I want to open a door? Do I want to save the shiv because I know I have an encounter coming up?
Right. And I do have to say, though, that the combat is still fun. Like, I like the combat in the original game, and I like it here. I think ultimately what I keep telling myself is that I just have to get to later, because I know already that some things do change mechanically, and I'm interested to see what kind of things they do. So I'm just not so into it so far.
Okay, well, you'll get there.
We'll see.
Yeah. I've been going back and playing the chapters and trying to 100% the game.
Yeah.
And because I've been doing that, I've been playing a lot with the accessibility settings.
Right.
One of them being turning off textures and doing the highlighted mode. God, it helps so much. Because all the textures and the way they do lighting, things are hidden so well in that game. That's like, I'm going to need to essentially turn on cheats to find things.
But that's another thing, though. Sometimes they are, and sometimes they're absolutely not. And what I mean by that is, like, if you're trying to 100% something, there's going to be stuff that they've hidden pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some stuff that they haven't hidden well at all that is extremely video gamey and takes me out of the realism that they're so desperately trying to convey. And
are you playing on moderate?
No, I cranked it way down.
Oh, okay.
I'm at very light because I'm just trying to get through this.
Okay. Yeah. See, I played on moderate, and even then I found like I was finding a lot of stuff just lying around very easily.
But the thing that I'm talking about is not something that I think that would be obfuscated on harder difficulties, where there's literally the code for the safe on the whiteboard in the same room that the safe is in.
Oh no, see, I'm talking about like getting all the trading cards.
No, I know what you're talking about. That's what I meant by, like, if you're trying to 100% it, there is stuff that's legitimately hidden.
Mm-hmm.
But that was glaring to me, and I was just like, that's like, freaking, it's not 2007 anymore. This isn't BioShock 1. Like, I feel like we can't do that as, like, video game. Like, the video game industry is not, like, you need to think further than that.
It's their hurdle of a puzzle, but it's not really a puzzle.
No, it's not. I was disappointed to see that a 2020 game that does so much other stuff to seem very modern and stuff that nobody's done before in a video game, to do something so elementary. Just, again, it took me out of the realism of it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the saves are annoying. Like, it's not like, oh, I have to find, like, it's...
And the gate code stuff is a little silly to me, too, where I'm just like, oh, I have all of these on one piece of paper. That's nice. That's convenient. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress. I'll see how I feel as it goes on. But yeah, it made a weird first impression on me, is what I'll say.
Yeah, once I finish the 100%, I'm going to need to actually go back in and play it again through New Game Plus to get the 100%, because you have to upgrade everything. But yeah, I mean, I'll play through the story again, maybe by the time we podcast next week. So okay. I'll have the story twice.
See,
you may not even get there.
All this time, because man, I could use some of that time. You have some spare time you can give me. Anyway, I'll finish it eventually, maybe in August.
All right.
All right.
That's it. There. All right, and I think that does it for us then.
I think so.
All right, let's wrap it up.
Plug away. Thank you for joining us this edition of the Media Boat Podcast. We'll be back next week with another live to YouTube taped version of the podcast for you. You can see us on YouTube if you go to youtube.com/just search Media Boat Podcast in YouTube and you'll find our page. We put all our archives of these podcasts on there, as well as archives of us playing games like The Last of Us Part 2. So check that out. You can also listen to the podcast in podcast form, in audio-only form, by looking it up in your podcast service of choice. Just search Media Boat Podcast. You can also find us on social media. On Twitter, our handle is @MediaBoatCast. On Facebook, just search Media Boat Podcast and you'll find our page. Like, comment, whatever you want to do on there. You can also email us directly with questions, comments, or anything else at mediaboatpodcast@gmail.com. And last but not least, just as a little hint of maybe what's to come, keep your eye on mediaboatpodcast.com, because there may be some movement there, because I just got charged for it again. And so I'm paying for the thing. Might as well remember to actually use it. So yeah, maybe we'll talk about post-pod about what we want to do with that thing since we have it. Yeah, so maybe keep an eye on that webpage. It may or may not change soon. So thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week with another episode. See you then.
Okay, bye.